Kanye Omari West, or Ye, as the federal government would probably, have him under. He's a great artist, Yusuf, what's your favorite Kanye song?
On Site?
It's On Site. This video is on site because you're watching it right now. But why are you watching it now? You see, that's the thing. Why am I making a Kanye West album ranking now? It's 2022. It's actually, and I mean solo albums, because that's what we're going to be discussing today. Why am I doing that now? Well, the answer is quite simple, actually. Because I had a Rolling Loud ticket, and I was supposed to see Kanye coming up soon, and he canceled. And they got Kid Cudi to do it now. But that's, you know what? But I digress. I've always thought that Kanye is a once-in-a-generation artist. He is an auteur, actually. He's a creative genius. But I've never really given my opinion on his albums as a whole, his discography leading up to this point. And especially after recent events, considering, his personal life and stuff like that, I genuinely believe that we're not going to see another full body of work from him for a while. So I just thought it'd be perfect now to officially discuss my thoughts on Kanye West music. And don't worry, this is not my favorite album of his. Or maybe it is. Let's get into it. So, this is not a surprise, folks. Jesus is King is subjectively, because objectivity doesn't exist, right? Subjectively, Jesus is King is Kanye's weakest record. Now, in my opinion, I don't think any of Kanye's albums are bad. You know what I mean? It's not musically and, as an actual body of work, a piece of music. It's not bad. You know what I mean? Jesus is King has some great songs. Some, though. And that's the key word right there. Some great songs. I like Follow God. I like On God. I like The God. That's not a song. I'm just kidding. Hands On has a good beat, right? There's so many aspects of this album that aren't terrible. But there's so many aspects of the album that aren't good. And by good, I don't mean it sucks. I just mean it's weak. I think on this album, Kanye kind of doesn't put any effort into it as much. It feels very rushed. And I know a lot of people were expecting Yandhi to come out. That was the whole thing. I think that's another reason why a lot of people don't really like Jesus King as much, because they were expecting a different album, and then this whole thing happened. Kanye was going to drop it after his SNL appearance, and then he went on that rant, and then it never dropped, and then his whole, gospel transitioning. And I can credit Kanye a lot for actually taking the chance to evolve and take a risk, but at what point did that kind of maybe affect how he approached the album? Because there's a lot of moments on Jesus is King where it feels sort of like a run-on sentence instead of a paragraph. On songs let's say Water. Water has a really nice, rhythm to it. It has nice production. Ant Clemens has a great voice. He's on it. But it doesn't really feel like a song. It just feels more like an idea. A concept that Kanye just put on the album, but never fully fleshed it out. And I think when it comes to the mixing of the album, too, it's probably his weakest. On Follow God, even though I just mentioned how I really enjoy that song, it's very lo-fi-esque. Something like maybe Mock Hami or Earl Sweatshirt would release. And if that's how the sound of the album was from front to back, I would agree. Okay, that's a choice. But then there's the song with I think Everything We Need, Everything I Need with Ty Dolla $ign. It's not like that anymore. It's clear cut. It's clean mixing. So Jesus King, to me, it's just a project where Kanye was in this zone, and that's usually how all Kanye albums are. But he's in this zone, and he really wanted to release something in that space, in that time. But it almost felt like he was obligated to. He had that, transformation where he became, clean, no more cursing, let's be, more religious, he wants to, show his appreciation of God. But as you'll see with my next placing in this, ranking, it's not as strong as it is in that album I'm about to talk about now. But I like that he talked about Chick-fil-A. You know, they have good chicken sandwiches and such. But that's like the worst song on the album too, so. Controversy. I was gonna talk about the other album I was just mentioning, but no. Number 9 is Yeezus. Yeah. Yeezus. Yeezus is... It's an album, but it's one of my least favorite Kanye albums, and I know it's gonna piss a lot of people off. I have some close friends that are probably going to jump me the next time I see them. Twitter will run my account to the ground, and I won't be able to show my face at the Kanye Reddit convention for a long time. But I think with Yeezus... Stop laughing, Yusuf. I think with Yeezus, it's something about that album where Kanye really wanted to do something different. But he does that, and he does that with all his albums, but this one is... There's this sort of like... It is more of a mystique around the album. Like, Kanye is entering this sort of headspace creatively where, and I think this is when that kind of started, where the controversy of the album outweighed the actual content of the album. You know what I mean? In 2013, Kanye was probably starting to get into that zone where he was being the most, not outlandish per se, but he was starting to be less and less afraid of saying whatever he wanted, and kind of, you know, you have the Sway interview, and you have the whole thing with Zane Lowe, where he was, you know, kind of the Gaga, you know, what does Gaga know about cameras, right? That whole thing. But I don't think that translated too well into the music. Now, I'm a fan of Death Grips. You know, I like industrial hip hop. I love clipping. You know, I like that kind of sound. But as I've said before, and I think this is where that started with Yeezus, it sort of feels more like you have the concept, you have the idea, but the execution just isn't there. For example, I think On Sight, even though I don't hate that song, I think On Sight, it's just a bunch of things happening at the same time. It starts off with some crazy beat, the crazy industrial, like, sound effects and, like, warped. It's cool, but then right in the middle, Kanye adds some, like, weird choir vocals from, like, the 70s, and it doesn't, or from around that era. I'm sorry, I'm gonna get hated on by like all of Music Board for this, but it's so out of place. And even if that were the point of the album, I wish it wasn't. It just doesn't feel like it too, because then there are songs like I Am a God that are... I defend Kanye a lot, even when he's being super egotistical, being so out there with his opinions, because at least he's being genuine. And I think that's a lot of reason why we gravitate towards Kanye in the first place, because he's not afraid to just be himself. But even with songs like I Am a God or Guilt Trip, it kind of gives that, you know, it gives that vibe that Kanye isn't really putting like pen to paper, right? He's in the studio, and the production, like I said, that's what a lot of the songs really like thrive, and I think there's some merit there. But then the lyrics, it's too egregious, you know. There's too much ego in there where it's not a balance, you know. I think the perfect balance, we'll talk about that later. I think there has to be a balance where Kanye is being personal and he's being very egotistical, but it's, even when he's being egotistical, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. I think on here it sounds the most kind of mean-spirited. Even though there are songs I really do enjoy. New Slaves is phenomenal from front to back. The outro is incredible too. Blood on the Leaves has a very nice musical passages through it, and I love the Nina Simone sample. Also, Bound to, you know, you listen to it in every Instagram story. They always gotta play Bound to. But Yeezus has 10 songs. That's like 3. Hold My Liquor, the guitar riff is cool. Thank you, Mike Dean. But I think personally, it is one of his weakest. I know a lot of people, it's become sort of a cult classic, but I just don't see it. Sorry. Okay, so this is what I was kind of alluding to with Jesus is King, which is our number 8 spot, Donda. Now, you're going to be seeing that a lot, or not a lot, but you're going to be seeing that later too, where I kind of mentioned how there's a Kanye album, and then he makes another album later. It's done better, you know, in the future. Personally, for me, I think Donda is like if Jesus is King, you know, got a degree. If Jesus is King just was better in that sense of like Kanye is really dropping some great personal anecdotes. There are themes present throughout the album that you don't see on Jesus King. Jesus King just feels more of like Kanye's talking about how much family values and God's, how much it's impacted him, but it's more of just like, it's not necessarily like stated clearly. It's just like he's like riffing about it. But on Donda, you have songs like, Jesus Lord, where he really talks about his headspace at the time and how he's feeling with his family and, his mom's influence. That's why it's called Donda. It's named after his mom. And he really sees that connection between, his mom's passing and then how that shaped him, but then also, kind of becoming like a born-again Christian in a way, and those values that have become present in his life. And on Donda, you have songs like that are, phenomenal. I think Jesus Lord is one of them. I think the song with Conway and West Side Gun is a great example of that too. But then you also have those songs on the album that it's just certified Kanye banger, certified Ye banger, like Off the Grid with Cash Cardi. I'm actually a big fan of Junior, even though I think Junior is an example of just like riffing. Kanye's in the studio. I like the energy, and I think that's something that's present on this album that maybe you wouldn't see on Jesus King. On Jesus King, a lot of it feels, like I said, not as much effort went into the album. On Donda, he's having fun on some songs, but then he's also getting very personal. And his wit is there too. I think one of Kanye's most important strengths is, his funny one-liners, or when his personality really comes in through the lyrics or through the production. Yeah. Thank you. It's just what makes him special. It's what makes him stand out. The messy line on Off the Grid is awesome. Oh, how can I forget to mention Come to Life? Shout out Leo. We'll put his Twitter handle on the top, I guess. But, that is a phenomenal track. It's beautiful. The instrumentation, the pianos, Kanye singing. I'm not even the biggest fan of Kanye singing. I mean, most of the time I don't think it's the best, but when it's done on Come to Life, it's beautiful, and it's one of those Kanye songs that you listen to for that sort of like when you really want to have like that good cry, like you want to put yourself in that, state of mind where you're like very emotional and you just want to like let it go. Come to Life is perfect for that. That's number 4. That's why I really enjoy Donda as a project, especially above Jesus King, which I think it's his, big brother. I do think there's too many songs, which is a negative. I do think there's a heavy reliance on the features, and I wouldn't have a problem with that if it was if there weren't as many songs, and maybe if it was balanced a little more. Because I do think sometimes Kanye is overshadowed by the features. I think my biggest pet peeve with Donda is I think Donda kind of starts, even though it's present before, Kanye has always hyped up his albums, or his albums have always been delayed for some reason, or there's a big, like mystique around it. But I think with Donda, his projects are starting to become more like events than a full body of work. And I mean, that goes to show with the concert performances. That goes to show recently with Donda 2, the album that shall not be named, because, you gotta listen to it on the stem player, and I don't have money. I'm broke. But what?
You just named it.
But anyway, I think that it's just it doesn't feel like an album anymore. It's good music, but it feels more like even though, like I said, there's a lot of present themes in the album, and, I think Kanye is really coming back strong on this one. There's just something about this one in terms of like an experience that it's almost like he really wanted people to enjoy this, like not like listening through the conventional way. And I think that can kind of hinder how you maybe consume the album. It was a lot of build up and a lot of, I'm not releasing it on time. And then the deluxe, which was a pointless deluxe in my opinion, added more songs than it needed to. Except Life of the Party. I would talk about Life of the Party for 2 more minutes, but I gotta keep going. But Andre 3000, Verse of the Year, is a phenomenal song, beautiful. If that was on the original album, and like before not being released after the fact, it would have been, still think it's the best song on the album. So Donda, rest in peace, thank you. And Donda, solid. Good work, Kanye. Thank you. All right. Number 7. 808s. And Heartbreak. There's a lot of attachment to this album. I'm very biased when discussing 808s and Heartbreak because I've written an article about it. I've compared it to Die Hard. Because I feel like these are two pieces of work that are super influential. And I think 808s and Heartbreak, if we were talking solely based on influence, it would be like number one, or at least in that like top discussion in terms of Kanye's projects. Because 808s literally spawned what we have now with artists like Drake, Young Thug, Future, all these the term would be auto-crooning artists. And you don't have that without this album. And I think what I really love about this album was Kanye was on top of the world. He was the biggest artist in the world at that time. It was 2008, and he could have just continued his success of, continuing to like make kind of obviously not radio friendly, but he was becoming like a pop rapper. I'll discuss that later on, but he was becoming that guy that, your mom would play in the car while she's driving you to soccer practice, and she'll be like, I like this is very catchy. But obviously there's a lot of things that happened in between that time. Sadly, Kanye's mom passed away, and it really put him in this, it made him very sad. It made him very depressed, and I think the only way he could express that emotion was through music. So I think 808s and Heartbreak is a byproduct of that. I remember saying in my article actually that it's like a diary entry, but like, doused in autotune in that, metaphor, I guess. And there's so many aspects of that album that I love. I think the production, the 808s, the use of the synths, the heartbreak. There's so many things about it that I just love. And I said recently, or you can just rewind, I said a minute ago how I don't love Kanye singing a lot of the time, but I think on 808s, it's so passionate. I think when Kanye sings, a lot of the time he is very passionate. And the autotune definitely helps. Songs like Heartless, he's rapping, but the chorus is very catchy. I love how much of his soul that he's bearing onto this project. Streetlights. Oh my god, Streetlights is a song that I've actually shed tears to. I'll be saying that again later for other songs, but that song is beautiful. The fact that Kanye is sort of like closing the album with this song, basically saying that he doesn't know where he's going to go from here, but eventually, it's very bittersweet, the ending. It's very melancholy. Like, he's in a state by the end of the album where he's kind of found direction, but he's just not there yet. But he knows eventually he will be. And I think the background vocals on that song are incredible. The Kid Cudi song, Welcome to Heartbreak, is great too. There's RoboCop. Great movie, great song. And it's Yusuf's favorite movie, so it's probably going to be his favorite song soon. Hopefully. There's just so much about this album to love. And it's not, I think from this point on, from the albums I discussed from him, there's nothing that I really hate about these, or like, not hate is a strong word, dislike. 808s, I think its biggest critique I can give is just, Kanye singing isn't really incredibly refined. There will be songs that are rough around the edges, songs that maybe, the concept is there, the lyrics are very powerful, and the beat is there, but his singing just isn't quite there for you to be like, it doesn't like, you're not grasped by it. It's like not as emotionally compelling as it could be. But just as a statement that it is, it's incredible that someone of his stature would just kind of take that detour and do something knowing that people were not gonna, like it as much. The, gatekeepers of hip-hop were gonna say he's gone soft, or, this isn't hip-hop, this isn't, what you're supposed to represent. And he still did it. And I'm glad that now, in hindsight, a lot of people really enjoy it and say this sparked an entire generation of artists. And I think that's beautiful. So 808s and Heartbreak, it might be a little bit lower on the list than, some people want it to be, but I still think it's a great album, and maybe in influence it's a classic. Maybe not all of the content I would say going forward, but in terms of what it represents in music and in hip-hop, I do think it is timeless. So Kanye named an album after his name now. His name is Ye. I know I've been saying Kanye. I hope he doesn't get mad at me if he ever watches the video. I hope he watches the video. But I just think, well, let's start from the beginning. 2018 was a big year for good music. You had the string of seven song albums, Pusha T's Daytona, Tiana Taylor's album, and then you have Kanye's album. It came after Daytona or before, I'm not entirely sure, but I remember being in 8th grade listening to this project, and what I really remember the most about it was the first song, which is I Thought About Killing You. And I think at first glance, or just on first listen, maybe there are songs that you kind of don't like. I remember at first I wasn't a big fan of Violent Crimes or of Ghost Town, which is weird because that's the biggest song on the album. Everyone loves that song, and I didn't really, enjoy it as much as I did the first listen. But there's something about Ye that just feels so. I know I've been saying that word a lot, personal, but I think this could be, up until that point, it could arguably be Kanye's most personal album, or at least one of them, in the sense that you have the first song where he's literally discussing his bipolar disorder and, his thoughts and his mental space at the time. This was after the whole, slavery is a choice comments and his TMZ rant. And, before then the whole Trump thing. He wasn't at a place where he was really liked by the media. And I think that's been a thing going on now a lot too. But with Ye, Kanye just took that and said, I'm going to take all these things that are happening in my life. I'm going to make an album about it. I'm going to go to Wyoming, record this whole thing, and just, 7 songs. That's it. It's right here. You take it or leave it. And it's incredibly strong. I think over the years too, a lot of the songs on Ye have really just hit. They connect. It's like a Mayweather jab. It's awesome. For example, just No Mistakes. I think, even though I know No Mistakes is a diss, okay, it is a Drake diss subtly near the end, but the beat on that song, the background vocals, those harmonies, and then Kanye, he has a very catchy flow. It's not the most personal song on the album, but musically everything just comes together so well that, it's like when you're listening to a song and maybe the content isn't something that impacts you, but the sounds impact you to that level where you just want to cry because it's so good. That's how I feel about No Mistakes. And that song in general, I mean, that song specifically. But then you have songs like Yikes, where Kanye is, hitting you with these like bars about how he's feeling at the time, talking about, Russell Simmons want to pray for him too. He's going to pray for him because he got me too'd. Crazy. Those lines, even though they're kind of, tongue-in-cheek, Kanye's being a little funny, that's when I personally see him at his best, because Kanye is known for those comedic one-liners, but also mixing them in with personal things going on in his life because he's not afraid to talk about these things. I think Ye is so good at finding that right balance for him. I love Wouldn't Leave, which is him talking about, his current wife. Now they're, Kim Kardashian, and that whole thing of how eventually she wouldn't leave him, even though after all the bad things that the media was saying about him and what he said, which is he was at a very dark place. I really like All Mine. He's got some bars on that one. Specifically one I love, None of Us Would Be Here Without Come, which it's a double entendre, in a way, because if it's crazy. But no, actually, that song is great. I think All Mine, and I really like the chorus. I think Aunt Clemens did the chorus. No, it was Party Next Door. I think It's great. And then the closing track, Violent Crimes. I don't know why I didn't like it at the time. Maybe I wasn't the biggest fan of 070 Shake's voice. It's grown on me a lot, but it was very mellow, and I guess I just couldn't really vibe with it as much. But now, that song is one of Kanye's, at least to me, most well-written songs about how having daughters really affected his view on women, and how he's been speaking on women, or, talking about them, coming up to this point in his career. And just, I think it's great. I think it feels like his tone too is a lot more like low. He's not as like, he's passionate, but he's very like low key, because it's a really tough topic for him, I guess, to talk about. He's not on the verge of tears, but you can tell this is something that he thinks about. It weighs heavy on his conscience. So, I don't know. Yay. Some of you might think it's too high on this list. I think, or maybe some of you really love it. I know a lot of people have been liking it as the years go by, but I have really, I would say, loved this project now. And I sort of wish that he could maybe do this again, because 7 songs that are all strong from front to back, I think it would be great for Kanye to maybe go back into that zone. It's getting serious now, because it's the top 5. We have entered the top 5, and number 5 for me is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, or as Twitter would call it, a lot of people would say this was a return to form for Kanye in 2010. I personally would disagree, because I don't think 2008 with 808s and Heartbreak was like a drop-off for him. He was just doing something different. But I will agree that the Kanye that we kind of, from before then, the Kanye that people were kind of used to was back in 2010. He was hitting us with witty lines, personal anecdotes, crazy things that were going on in his life. But with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, it really was like dialed up to 11. I mean, songs like Dark Fantasy, Power, and Power is like the biggest radio hit off of it. Besides Runaway and all, and All of the Lights, great songs. But these songs, Kanye is really coming in hard. That's 2. It's crazy how aggressive he sounds on this one. I think Kanye, from the reception of 808s, I would say he was genuinely angry. Like, he was mad that people thought that just because he wanted to start singing meant he wasn't the same anymore. Like, his talent just left. And you can really see that on a lot of verses on this project. His 2 verses on Gorgeous are incredible. I mean, the line, "Get caught with 30 rocks, the cop looked like Alec Baldwin." That's a bar. I mean, I can name so many more of those. So Appalled. I think So Appalled probably is, it's one of those Kanye songs that you really, I rarely hear people mention when they talk about like great posse cuts. Like, Kanye's verse is great. Jay-Z's verse is great. Come on, Jay-Z's verse, I already said, Pusha T kills it. Still move a bird like I'm in bed with Mother Goose. Oh my god. Pusha T, he's one of the greatest at this point, but that bar is enough. And then you have Sci-Hi the Prince, who kills it with his verse. He was very up and coming at the time, and nowadays he's kind of one of the biggest ghosts. Like, he writes a lot of verses for Kanye and Travis. He's a lyrical genius. And then the RZA part at the end is just fun. Like, RZA doesn't have a verse, but him repeating the chorus is just, it gets you in that zone. And then Swiss Beats obviously introduces it, but that song was incredible. Runaway, is incredible. The pianos, I don't know how Kanye thought of that. Just that one note, and then playing it, and then Pusha T's verse, and the chorus, the melody. There's so many good things about this album. Devil in a New Dress, that's Rick Ross at his best. I don't know what happened with Rick Ross on that song, but he really just wrote. That's his magnum opus of verses right there. I don't think he's ever topped that since. He's been good, but there's something about that album which makes sense. It's, people think it's his best. I personally don't. As you can see from the placing, this one might be a little controversial. People might not like that it's at this spot for me, but just because I have it, it's not number one for me, doesn't mean I don't think it's a classic. I think this album is incredible. 100 Gex states this album as an inspiration. That's how far this goes. This is Kanye production-wise at his best, lyrically at his best, and as a conductor of sorts, putting the right people together in terms of, features and, working with Bon Iver. I know I didn't mention the Nicki feature on Monster, but yes, Nicki Minaj did have the best feature and the best verse on that song. It was great. It's too many things about this album that you just cannot deny. And listen, I don't think it's a 6 out of 10. Sorry, Fantano. I think it's higher. If I were to give it a rating, I'd say it's a really good. It is a really good album, and it is a classic at this point. So that's why it's number 5. Now, the name Pablo could be associated with a lot of people. Pablo Picasso. Pablo Escobar. Pablo, a friend of mine that I knew when I would play basketball as just a toddler. But the life of Pablo, that's about one guy. That man is Kanye West. Now, remember when I mentioned, I've mentioned before that I think certain Kanye albums sort of get an upgrade later on, but under a different title. I think Life of Pablo is what Yeezus should have been, and what it became. A lot of these sounds, and this is like number 12, we're killing it right now. What that album, was striving for, you get it on Life of Pablo. You get the ego, Kanye really hitting you with these, bars of, he said, he made Taylor Swift famous. That's why he thinks him and Taylor, could have made it, because that's what he thinks. Whether you agree with him or not, it's entertaining when Kanye is sort of, kind of being a little cheeky, but you sort of see that his mind is just flaring on all cylinders, and he just wants to say whatever comes to his, cerebral cortex, cortex, yeah. But with Life of Pablo, it's this craziness, it's this insanity, but it's in a way it's contained, because Life of Pablo isn't just about Kanye, just stating a bunch of how he feels, where he belongs in hip hop, how much of a genius he is, how he thinks that, he's the next Walt Disney, he's Pablo Picasso in the flesh. That's part of the album, but a lot of it is also very sort of therapeutic in a way. Kanye has mentioned before with Life of Pablo that this is it's a gospel album, but with a lot of cussing. And there are a lot of moments that feel like that. Ultralight Beam starts off the album, and it's very, very, gospel influence. You have the choir vocals and Kanye talking about, how he deliver us peace, as if he's speaking to God. Then you have Chance the Rapper, a very well-known, obviously well-known rapper, but he's very vocal about, his religion and what he believes in. So he's Kanye West's protege. He met Kanye West. He's never gonna fail. Very iconic line from that song. There's a lot of moments like that on this album. And then you have what could possibly be the best song, but also just a moment in the album where you see just how good Kanye can be with the pen. You know what I mean? Sometimes Kanye doesn't get credit for, how funny, and not just funny, but witty. I think wit is very important with Kanye. I've mentioned that before in this video a lot. On No More Parties in LA, which is a verse that he wrote that whole verse. That was him. He out-raps Kendrick Lamar, in my opinion. Kendrick has a great verse, and I think anyone else in that moment, they wouldn't have been able to top Kendrick there. But the bars on Kanye's verse, what Kanye says, I've been uninspired since Lauryn Hill retired and 3 Stacks. The bars, the Mulholland Drive line, I love when he says that he worries about Kim, but Saint and Baby Ye, I ain't worried about them. it's so good. And then he has that whole Pablo refrain where he feels like Pablo when he's working on his shoes. He feels like Pablo when they see him on the news. That is some of the best rhyme schemes, like wordplay, that I think Kanye, from that point, like, we hadn't seen that for him, in my opinion, since Late Registration, which I'll get into later. Obviously, you know the albums that are going to be next. You're a Kanye fan, that's why you're watching the video, hopefully. But Life of Pablo, to me, even with what some people could say, oh, there might be songs that shouldn't be on there, or maybe some songs Kanye's outshined to a degree. I disagree with some of those claims, but I can understand why people wouldn't have this. I have this over My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. That's a tall order. But that's just how I feel. This album has kind of grown on me a lot. Like, I can just listen to this at any time, and I think too many songs on this album that I haven't even mentioned, Real Friends, Saint Pablo with the incredible Sampha feature. There's too many things about this album that I just have to recognize as at least a personal preference that I have over all the other albums I've mentioned that I've also really enjoyed. I think Life of Pablo 2 was, to me, is the last that Kanye album up until that point that's been released, like up until now, the last one that felt like an album. I know there were some delays to it, and I know that he added on to it and he had to fix it after it was released, but it feels like a you know, it's coherent, like a concise piece of work where he really worked on each of at least 80 or 90% of the songs individually. Like, he had an idea and he executed it. So yeah, Life of Pablo, numero cuatro. That rhymes. So my top three all consist of what some would call, you know, the College trilogy. And you can call me a conformist. You can say that, you know, I could be basic, but these albums are too good. Like, they're so good that Kanye got so much praise that he look at it. It's true. Kanye has the right, at least to me. I can understand why he says that he thinks he's the next Picasso, or he thinks that he's just, the game wouldn't be the same without him, because it wouldn't. These three, and I think these three albums solidify that, even before he dropped Quality After. And number 3 for me is Graduation. Now, a lot of you must be thinking, oh, but Graduation, isn't that like his most, like what some would consider his most dated work? You know, a lot of the sounds on that album are very, like, 2000s. I would agree. I mean, the T-Pain feature is definitely feels like a relic of the past sort of thing, or Stronger with the Daft Punk stuff. I get it. But when Kanye transitioned into the whole pop rap sort of thing that he did with Graduation, he did it more like, you know, Prince with the Batman soundtrack, and not like, you know, Drake making dance hall music. It's a style choice. Like, he's doing it because it's the only other place he could go creatively, not because he was trying to, I guess you can say, sell out and make sure everyone in the world knew who he was. It was genuine. And come on, songs like I Wonder, songs like Good Morning, Champion, The Glory, these are songs that show that this isn't just Kanye doing this to make money. He's doing this because this is the sound he wants to work with, and this is what he had in mind going into it, ending it. The album feels very, and it's called Graduation, it's supposed to feel very celebratory. This is like Kanye running his bases and sort of reaching that point of just wanting to enjoy the fruits of his labor. And you can tell, like I said before, I Wonder and Big Brother, those two songs, I have cried before listening to those songs. I Wonder mainly because it's such a beautifully, and, you know, it's so meticulous the way that beat comes together. My Song is such a great song, and the fact that he sampled it in the way he did for that, it's, like I said, it's one of those songs where it sounds so good that you just, like, have to, like, shed a couple tears, like, of joy, because it's how good it is. And Big Brother, I think, is such a great, like, letter to someone. It was him addressing Jay-Z, but when he says, at the end of the song, he says, He says, if you admire somebody, you should go ahead and tell them. People never get the roses while they can still smell them. That's inspirational. We're talking about something that's inspirational, like that really makes you think and that puts a lot of things in perspective. That line right there. And he did that when Kanye wrote that, he was 28, 29 years old. Like, to me, that goes to show how much of a genius he is. I don't mind throwing that word around because I genuinely believe it. Graduation is a phenomenal album, incredible. I don't see a problem with me putting it in the top 3. I think it's very much deserved. Maybe the Lil Wayne feature on Barry Bonds isn't as strong as it should be. Drunken Hot Girls, but those are just, when you have so many other great songs and Kanye at his peak, there's no reason why it shouldn't be. You know what I mean? It just feels right. So this sweater can finally come into play. I've been wearing this since the beginning, and it makes sense. For me, number 2 is College Dropout. Now, if you asked me where this would be, like, if you asked me maybe 2-3 years ago, I would have said number 1. And maybe in the future, there could be something that I changed my mind to, it goes back. But College Dropout is the birth, metaphorically and music-wise, of Kanye West. It's a risk. Actually, I'm sure if you should see, if you haven't already, the Genius documentary about Kanye, Genius, on Netflix. And it really puts into perspective just how much hidden potential Kanye had, that he really had to force himself into the industry so people can hear him. Because he was already an incredible producer. He had produced on the Black album, the Blueprint, Jay-Z. He produced for Cameron. And he was already like, you go to him for beats. He was that guy. He was the guy you wanted to go for to get the best production possible. But Kanye said, I don't just make beats, like I want to rap. Like people would tell him, hey, you're the best producer like in the game. And it's not that he wouldn't like when people said that, but he would sort of be like, yeah, but I'm more than just that. Like I can rap too. And College Dropout is that album where people find, which is his first, coincidentally enough, people from the beginning, even then, it just goes, wow, Kanye West is the future of hip-hop. I can go on and on about 2 words, the Mos Def beginning verse is incredible, and then Kanye comes in with just the flow he matches, the raw, like the energies is just, I'm at a loss for words of how good it was. You have songs like Never Let Me Down, Last Call. You don't see, at that time, I don't think an artist would do something like, think about that song Last Call. He has a whole first verse talking about how he's made it. It's kind of like the watershed moment where he's finally thinking about how he's here and he's put his foot in the door in hip hop. And then he spends the other, 8, 9, 7 minutes just talking about, like, not even rapping. He's just kind of talking about his, how he got here, thanking the people that put him in that position. And that process, that's something that you wouldn't want, like, you wouldn't see someone do that on their first album, already kind of showing love and, thinking about their place in the game. That's unheard of. And to think that this album too, you have songs that could even, hit in the radio. Jesus Walks, that is a song about Kanye talking about how rappers should, maybe look to rap about Jesus, or like how maybe like that's something that they should be like, looking to. That's like, it technically, Jesus Walks is a Christian rap song. Kanye curses on it and he's not, necessarily being clean, but that is a song about Kanye's faith. And he's saying that he can rap about all these other things, but instead he raps about Jesus and he makes it sound cool. He makes it sound good. You want to pick up the Bible after listening to Jesus Walks, because, I know that sounds weird and it might be a little like offensive, I guess, but that's how good that song is and how Kanye's influence in that sense of just making that song and then people play that song. I think that song, I don't know whether it went number 1 or not, but it was there. It was in that build. Kanye did it. Kanye did that. He did. And All Falls Down, just how that song came to be with Kanye getting the Lauryn Hill sample, and then it couldn't get cleared, so he got I think I always forget Johnson. He says it on the song. Sylvia, it might be Sylvia Johnson. I hope I didn't pronounce Sylvina. However, he gets her to recreate the background, and her vocals are incredible. They match Lauryn Hill's so well, and it makes for probably the best chorus on the album. So that was incredible too. And then I can't not mention Through the Wire. This man was working on this album, gets into a car accident. His jaw becomes literally wired shut, and he still decides to record the song like that. So you can just, it shows how determined he is, how much he wanted it, how much he wanted to be that number one guy in hip hop. And he made that song with his jaw wired shut and an incredible Chaka Khan sample. Through the Wire. It's perfect. I mean, come on. In the same hospital where Biggie Pac died, the doctor said I had blood clots, but I ain't Jamaican, man. Story on MTV, and I ain't trying to make a band. It's like I said, it's the flow, the way he delivers it, but then you have to also realize that he's trying to push through pain recording the song. His jaw is wired shut. It's incredible. College Dropout isn't just, I've been saying classic before with his previous albums I've mentioned. It's not just timeless. It goes down as one of the greatest albums ever of all time, easily. But I think there is a Kanye album that is better. And that's where my number one spot goes to. Late Registration. I think as I've started to mature as a person and grow and, sort of understand my preferences more, I don't want to put this this like label on myself, but I'd say I'm kind of an old soul. Like, I enjoy these older forms, or what would have been considered more popular at the time, to be where we were really hitting these peaks in music. And I think Late Registration, even though Kanye was already doing stuff like that with soul and bringing back these sounds that weren't in the mainstream anymore, Late Registration takes that but to another level, where he's really showing how he was raised, all these jazz instrumentation and these very like this percussion and these instruments that are very old school. You wouldn't hear them on like a radio song, but Kanye didn't care about that, because Kanye knew no matter what he was gonna make, people were gonna listen to it. So and it was gonna get big, and he was gonna his legend status was gonna keep growing. I think Late Registration, while it is a level of just preference of the more jazzy instrumentation and that sound, Kanye's always been comfortable in his songs. He's never felt like he's had to be someone else or do something to become big, because he's already so talented. He doesn't have to do that. That's like 15. With Late Registration, it takes that to a whole nother level. You have songs like We Major, the incredible horns, and just, how do I describe it? Like the feature and the chorus, but also the fact that he has this amazing first verse. It sets the tone, and then you go, where are we gonna go from here after this? And then he gets Nas, another thing to show how much these legends respected Kanye even so early in his career and gave him that verse. Nas spits, in my opinion, his best feature verse, like on someone else's song, his best feature verse ever. He kills it. And then it's just this, you get this wave of, it makes you want to go out and do something. When I listen to We Major, when I listen to a song like Touch the Sky with Lupe, these songs, they're triumphant, but they're not just triumphant, they put you in this headspace where you just feel like you can do anything. And I know Graduation is kind of like that album that's where Kanye really wanted to like make these like songs that people can listen to and feel good. But I think Late Registration does that in more subtle ways, not just with the instrumentation or with like the overall sound of the album. Even though not all of the song topics will discuss about like, succeeding, but they just feel very like the lyrics, the way he says them, so much confidence exudes from every line. And the song topics that he discusses, like Touch the Sky is a classic, like, in that regard, where he's talking about, till the day he dies, he's gonna touch the sky. Sort of like he's gonna keep moving up. He's gonna, like, he can only go so high from here. Like, that's how his success. You also have songs like with Brandy, Bring Me Down, where he talks about how people will, like that hate, or like how some people, they're not going up to bat for him, how it could affect him, but he doesn't care anymore. He's already, he's starting to reach this point where nothing can bring him down, and he's gonna succeed regardless. Or Late, I think the song Late, it could be, I think that goes, Late It Goes as Kanye's most underappreciated song. It is a perfect closer, and it is Kanye's, I think, in terms of flow, like the way he's delivering these lines, it's this like mix of like laziness, but also this like, it's this confidence that is just so laid back, but you feel everything that he's saying. Especially after listening to the whole album, you get to Late and you listen to this incredible body of work. Late is just like that cherry on top. I haven't even mentioned Crack Music, where Kanye's talking about, the crack epidemic and how it affected him and his community, with those really hard, horns that come into the beat, and then the Game like rapping the chorus, sort of like a loud statement. And then you have songs like Drive Slow, where he gets someone like Paul Wall. They have two completely different styles. Paul Wall's a southern rapper. He has that kind of southern drawl, but he makes a beat that fits Paul Wall to rap on, and then him too, and then Kanye can also get on, and they have some great chemistry that you wouldn't expect. I think Late Registration does what all the other albums I've mentioned, all their positives and what really make them stand out. Somehow, even though Late Registration is its own specific sound, it's not trying to be multiple things. It gets all those components and like wraps it up in a really neat bow. It gets everything that I want in a Kanye record, and like, it's perfect. It's like the perfect mix of everything. I don't think it'll be knocked off as my number one spot anytime soon. Maybe it will be, but it's too good. It feels so good that it's almost like unnatural. How like only on your sophomore record, or you can get that good. You can make a project that, in my opinion, could go down. Like, again, I already said, one of the best hip hop albums like of the past 20 years. Or however long you want to say, but could be arguably the best, one of the best records of the 2000s, where that was like, in hip hop too, that was there was a lot of good stuff to come out in that time. I don't know, I'm already getting so wrapped up in some of the songs and how good, like, just everything about it, that I'm starting to lose my train of thought. But there you go, Late Registration, my number one pick, hands down. At this point, I can say confidently, hands down. So there you have it, audience, people, free thinkers. This was my Kanye West solo album discography. I didn't want to include any of his collaborative records, because I feel like when it comes to Kanye himself, and that's the final one, that's like the celebratory one, I really his solo albums are more a reflection of him. And I think that's more important to me. Who he is as a person and an artist are more shown in the albums I discussed than maybe a Watch the Throne, or even something as good as a Kids See Ghosts. I love that record too. If I included it on this list, it'd be very high as well. But this is just how I feel, and I really just want to say, before we close everything out, that as biased as I sound in this video, because I know it can come off as me. Never mind. This is the last one. I promise. This is the last one. There are very few artists or people in their respective field that I talk about with such high regard like this, because when you are consistent and you make this many good pieces of work, like a body of work, it's fascinating to me, and I think those are the kind of artists that we should give more credit to and really just appreciate before they're done, like they stop making music, or they're just not on this earth anymore. And I think that's something that we should, especially, come on, like, state of the world, how, there's always stress or tension or whatever. That's stuff to me that I really like to think about. It's, in moments like this, maybe I should, go to a space or go to a place where I can appreciate something or someone. And I think Kanye is one of those people. And I think no matter how his public opinion changes for the good or for the worse in the future, or if maybe he never makes another quality album again, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I think this is music that I'm going to show to my kids, their grandkids, however many generations. It needs to be heard, to whoever, and it's impacted me so much in my life and helped me grow as a person, that even the negatives that I've stated in this in this ranking, which there hasn't been that many, but it's never to tear him down. It's just kind of it's just my opinion. And even then, I can't seem to not give Kanye the credit he deserves, because he deserves all of it. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Hope you enjoyed this. I love you, fellow monkeys. Maybe that'll stick. I hope so. But, oh, Mom forever.